Alright, so in the beginning we're going to create a new folder. Go to the desktop and then create a folder. We're going to call this folder SQLite Python. Then we're going to select the folder, and there we go. So it will actually open for us. Then inside there we're going to create two files. So we're going to create a main file and a database file. So the first one is main.py. Then we're going to create another one. We're going to call it database.py, and there we go. So select that database.py and we're going to type in some code. Alright, so first of all we're going to import SQLite 3. Okay, then go to the next line. Then we're going to open from Pyside Qt widgets. We're going to import all. So just going to import all components. Let's create a class widget, subclass of Qt widget, then define the init, then super.init, and then after that we're going to set the window title SQLite database. Then there we're actually going to set the geometry of the Windows Qt widget. Alright, so now we're going to create some functions. We're going to start with the create connection function. So this is going to help us create the connection to the SQLite database. Type pass because you're not going to type anything inside. So next we're going to create one for inserting data, demo data into the database. Alright, so now write in the word self, then pass. So next we're going to create one for adding data to the database. Then next we're going to have one to load data into our Qt tables. Right, so there we go. So next we're going to also add another one that will help us call or extract data into the QLine edit. So next we're going to have one for updating data. Then lastly we're going to have one for deleting data. We're going to call it delete data. Next we're going to go into the main file and we're going to do some imports. So from Pyside6 Qt widgets we're going to import Q application. Then we're going to import sys. Then from there we're going to import the database file. So from database import the widget class. So now we're going to create an app variable which shall be equal to Q application sys argv. The next line we're going to create a variable widget which shall actually be a subclass of widget. Then widget.show. Then we're going to execute our application. Then let's run it to see if it works. Alright, so you can see that it is actually working. So this is what we have. Alright, so now that we've seen this, we're now going to go and add some more. We're going to add push buttons and QLine edits and the rest. But before we do that, let's first make a connection to the SQLite database. So we're going to create an SQLite database connection. So now we're going to type in the variable self.connection, because I want this to be accessible to all different functions, is equal to SQLite3.connect. Then we're going to create the database. It shall be employees.db. Then it shall appear in our main file. So return self.connection after that. So as we've said, our database is going to be called employees.db and it will appear in our main file. Alright, so now we're going to create Q labels and QLine edits. So now let's first begin with the Q labels. So we're going to create Q labels. So the first one is going to be that for the name. It's going to be called name label and we shall call it name. Then we shall have the profession label. We shall call it profession. Then we shall have that for address label, which we shall call address. Then we're going to create one for the age lastly, which shall actually be called age. So next we're going to create QLine edits for each one of them. So the QLine edits are where a user can actually input the values. So now we're going to call the first one for line name line edit, which shall be equal to QLine edit. Then we're going to duplicate this and create one for each one. So we're going to have one for the profession, then we're going to have another one for the address, then we're going to have another one for the age. So now we need to line these up horizontally in pairs. So we need to line up the Q name, the Q label. We're going to line it up with its edit label. So how are we going to do that? Because we need to actually align them horizontally. So that is now the next step. So now we're going to create a horizontal layout which shall actually be a subclass of QHbox layout. Then inside here we're going to add widgets to it. We're going to add the widget for the name. We're going to add the name label. Then we're now also going to add the name line edit. So once we've done that, we're going to copy this and then we're going to do that for each of the different values. So we're going to have that for the profession, that for the address, and also that for the age. So now we're going to change this to profession. So we're going to have this as h layout 2. Then we're going to change the widgets to profession label and profession line edit. So once you're done with that, we're going to create the one for the address. So this is going to be h layout 3. Change this to address label. Then it's going to be the address line edit. Alright, so copy that again, and then we're going to have that for the age. This is going to be h layout 4. Change this to age label, and then we're going to change this also to age line edit. Alright, so next we're going to add Q push buttons. We're going to have one for adding a new item into the table. So we're going to create the button. We're going to call it add data. It's going to be used to add a new row. Then we're actually going to create a function so that when it's clicked, something happens. So when it's clicked, it will actually call the function add data that you actually see right there. So now let's create another one. So we're going to create another one that will actually enable us to update the data. So we're going to call this update selected row. Then we're going to call it, and it will be used to connect to the function update data. So let's scroll and see where that is. So that's actually at the very bottom. So it will actually call that function. Alright, so the next step is we want to group everything. So I want to group the labels, edits, and push buttons together inside a form. So we're going to create a group. It's going to be called add form. It should be used to add new employee as the title. But before we do that, let's first lay out the 2 cube push buttons horizontally. So now we're going to change this to h layout 5. This is for laying out those push buttons horizontally. This is for h layout 5. So we're going to add the 2 Q push buttons, that for add data and that for update data. So, alright, so let's continue with the group. So now we're going to lay out all the items vertically inside this group that we've created. So we're going to have it as form layout is equal to QV box layout, that is for vertical layout. So we're going to add the form. So we're going to add the different items to the form. So we have the layouts from h layout 1 to h layout 5. Then we're going to set this layout to that form. So once we've done that, we can now display all elements inside our major widget. So we need everything to be displayed vertically. So we're going to display all elements vertically. So that means we're going to now create the major layout. So it's going to be layout being equal to QV box layout, because everything will be laid out vertically. So layout dot, so we're going to add the widget. So we're going to add this form here into that list of elements that will be laid out vertically. So self.layout. So we're going to set this to be set. So we're going to declare that. So now let's run this and see what we have. So this is what we have. So this is how everything is actually displayed at the moment. As you can see, it works perfectly. Alright, so next step, we want to add a QTable widget into our design. So create it. So self.table is equal to QTable widget. Then we're now going to actually set the maximum width, which shall be 800 pixels. Then we're now going to set the different column widths. So we have 4 different items in the columns. So that's why I have a column count of 4. And then we're going to have each column width. So we're going to have column 1 being equal to 150, 150, and the smallest one for edge shall be 50 pixels. So now, next we're going to set the horizontal header labels, and this shall be very important. So we're going to have that column for name. We're going to have that for profession, then we're going to have that for address, then lastly we're going to have that for age. Now once we've done that, we can now make sure to display the table. So layout add widget, then we're going to add the self.table. Then now we can run it to see the table being displayed. So let's run this Python file, and as you can see, our table is actually displayed with all the column headings right here. So that means that it is actually working well. Alright, so let's do something else. So next step is under the table, we're going to add more Q push buttons. So we're going to have a button for inserting demo data, and that shall be our first button. So we're going to call it insert demo list data. Then we're going to actually create a connection. So when it is clicked, something will happen. It will actually now call the insert data function. So now let's create more. So we're going to have that will help us to load data into our display. So we're going to have it call the load data function. Then we're going to have another one that will actually enable us to extract or call data. So this will call it extract data. It will call the call data. Then we're going to have another one lastly for deleting data. So it shall be called button to delete data. So it will be used to delete data, and to call the delete data. Alright, so the next step is one to actually place these all on display. So now we're going to display each of the individual buttons. So we're going to display the first one at the list. We're going to have the insert data. Then next, after that, vertically will be the load data button. Then after that, we're going to have the call data button, and then lastly we shall have the delete data button, all laid out vertically. So let's run this and see how they'll be displayed. So this is how our items will look when displayed. So depending on how you arrange them is how they will appear vertically in arrangement. Alright, so first of all, we're going to comment out all the actions of the different buttons. So just go there and then just comment those out. We shall activate them one at a time. Then go to the insert demo data. So we're going to have to insert demo data. So we're going to create a connection. Right, so there we go. So we're now going to create the query. So the query shall be to create a table that is called employees list. Every time this is actually called upon, so it will actually create a table with column names, name. Then you're actually going to insert the data types. So where there is text, and then age shall be an integer in that category. Alright, so now we're going to list the employee details in tuples. So make sure to actually list down all the employee details that we're actually going to be using for just illustration. So this is going to be the first name, that's going to be the profession, Kampala, then the age is 28. Then duplicate that into 4 of them. So let's have 4 different types of data. So change the name so that each name is unique. Then we're going to change the professions, veterinarian here, this is an accountant, this is a civil engineer, correct that. This is going to be Wakiso Masaka, then this shall be Gulu. Then change the ages 22, 25, and 24. Alright, so now we're going to insert multiple rows inside our table. So now we have to execute many in this case. So we're going to insert into the employees list table that we've actually just created the different values right here. Then we're going to comma self list of employees. Alright, then go to the new line and then self.connection.commit. So commit that self.connection close. Alright, so I think I made a mistake. I actually need to add to make a call to the connection method right here. So we need to change this. So we're going to change this to the create connection method. Alright, so now we can go back to the main and we can run our Python file. So here it is. Actually, let's start that again. So we're going to run our Python file. Then we're going to sample inserting that demo data. So I believe it should have worked, though I don't see anything yet. But let's go and see if our table has been created. As you can see, our database file has been created. It's called employees there. So we have our database file created. Alright, so let's delete it first, and then we're going to actually, so we have to first close this running file. So let's delete that. Then we're going to try this again, but this time we want a print statement to appear for us to know that we've actually inserted data successfully. So we're going to print the statement, inserted demo data successfully, right there. So let's try it again. Run that Python file again. Then when I click insert, I believe it has worked, and you can see it's inserted data successfully. And then when you check again, you can see it has created the database employees yet again. So it's actually working just as we wanted. Alright, so now I want to be able to load all this data into a Q table widget. So now we're going to first create the connection. And then right now we want to find out of counting the rows. So we're going to create a query for counting the rows inside the table of employees list. And then now we need another query to actually select all items from the employees list table. Now once we have that, we now need to find the number of rows in the table. Then we're going to find it this way. So we're going to execute the query of counting the rows, and then we're going to fetch 1. Then when we do that, we're going to print the number of rows just to see if we've actually counted correctly. So I believe there should be 4 in number. Then now after that, we're actually going to print that. So now we're going to set that to the row count. That's what we're going to instruct the Qt table with, that row count number of the number of items in the table. So now we're going to actually create a for loop, and then inside here we're actually going to insert each of the different items into the Qt table widget. So now each row will actually take on all items. Remember to set the last one to a string because that has age, which is an integer. Alright, so once you've done that, you can now go to the very top, go where you actually have the button for loading data, then remove the comment, and then we're going to test that. So go to the main, then we're going to run that. Alright, let's do that again. So run that, and then let's actually see if the data will load. So we're going to click on load data. So there's already some information in the database. As you can see, we've loaded all the information into the table and it's working. Alright, so it's working perfectly just as we want, and it's showing us the number of rows, which are 4 rows. So go to where I have the function add data, and then inside here we're going to create our cursor. So self.cursor shall be equal to self, then make a reference to the create connection method dot cursor. Then now we want to make a call to all the name line edit text. So a text that will appear in the name line edit. So we're going to initialize that information from the QLine edits as a list. So we're going to call this list new employee. Then we're going to list out the text that will come from all the QLine edits. So we're going to have that from the name line edit. We're going to have that from the profession line edit, that from the address line edit, and that from the age line edit. Alright, so next we're now going to add new employee to SQLite table. So we're going to write down a query. Self.cursor.execute insert into employees list, which is the name of the table, the values that we actually have here. Then we're going to press a comma, and then we're going to have the self new employee right there. Alright, so next I want to clear the QLine edits every single time a user has already placed add to table. So I want them to be cleared immediately after. So I'm going to add the dot clear to each of the QLine edits. Alright, so once we have that, we can now close this. So we're going to commit this. So we're going to first print new name. Actually, let's first print the new name added so to actually see in our terminal. So that's going to be it, and then we're going to create a connection. Then it's going to be self.connection. Alright, so I forgot to add the word text here, so that's going to be very, very important before printing. Now we can scroll to the top, and we can now remove that. We can remove that comment so that we actually have the add active. So remove that comment right there to make it active. Then we're going to go to the main. Then we're going to run the Python file. So let's see what happens when we actually add a new item. But before we do that, let's actually load the data that's already presently there. So we have 5 different items. So let's actually load a new name. Let's actually type a new name. So name is Ben Carson. And then remember, this is actually a doctor. So we're going to call, of course, it's a doctor by profession. Then I don't know the real exact address, but I'm actually going to try something random. I'm just going to guess something. I'm just going to guess North Carolina. Alright, then I don't know his real age, but I'm just going to gauge, maybe he's 52 or something. Then let's add that, and then let's load, and as you can see, it actually appears in our list. Then you can see right there in the terminal, we actually said the number of rows have become 6. Now I want the new name to actually be printed on the terminal, but we actually have to put it right before we actually clear. So that's actually an order problem. So I needed to actually place it right at the top here before clearing the items in the name line edits. Alright, so now we can run this again, and I believe this time when we type a new name, it should actually show in the terminal. Alright, so we're going to have to try again. So we're going to have to try a new name. Alright, so a new name this time shall be, I'm going to go for an actor. I'm going to type in Leonardo DiCaprio. Then the profession is obviously an actor. I'm going to guess Miami. Then the age, I'll try 44 for now. Then let's click add. So I believe it's working. So you can see new name added is Leonardo DiCaprio. So it's actually working just like we wanted, and you can see the number of rows is now 7. So it's working perfectly. Alright, so before updating data, we need to be able to first extract it or call it into the QLine edit. So that's what we're going to first do. So we're going to make a function to actually call it. So we're going to have to first find the current row that has actually been selected every single time. So I want to make sure that when a user clicks on a certain row in the Qt table, it is actually selected, and we can actually start from there. So we're going to call that first. We're going to attach that whatever it's selected to the variable current row index. Alright, so now we need to call all the details from the queue line edits, and then we're going to assign them to variables. So remember, whenever we get any item from the queue line edits, we need to convert them to strings first. So collect each one, then we're going to attach them to the right variable. So that for profession, that for address, and that for age. And then after that, we're going to change the queue line edits to the above variables. So remember, the queue line edits, one was named name line edit. We're going to give it that variable. We're going to set its text that variable. We're going to do that same thing for the one of profession, for address, and for age. So make those changes right there. So now that we've done that, we can now go to the top and look for where we have the button for calling data or extracting data. Then we're actually going to remove the comment. Then going to main.py and run the Python file. Alright, so it is actually loaded perfectly. Alright, so let's see what works. So now we've loaded data first, then select each item and see what happens when you extract. And as you can see, it has extracted successfully. Try another one, it extracts that. Then try Juco, it extracts that. I believe you get the point. It's actually extracting each one when you actually select it. So it's actually working perfectly. Now when we're able to do this, we can now update the data. Alright, so now we're going to go into the update data function. Then we're going to create the cursor. So create the connection to it. And then next we need to now extract the current data from the queue line edits. So we're going to create a list. Then inside here, we're going to make a call to the current text. We're going to make a call to the current name, current profession, then the current age right there. Then we need to actually decide where we actually need to decide an old name. So we actually need to decide, so I need to add one for the old name so that we can have a reference of an old name which is changing. Alright, so once we have that, we can now go and type in the query. So self cursor.execute. So we're going to type in the query update employees list set. So we're going to set name to whatever we're going to have, name, profession, address question mark, age question mark, where name is equal to that question mark. So now we're going to give that a reference to the old name. Alright, so now click enter, and then we're going to print something on screen whenever this happens. So we're going to print the old name first. So the old name was name, self name, edit. Then we're also going to print the new name. So a new name is name.line.edit, and the text that is actually there. So actually change this to is. Alright, so once we've done that, we can now clear the line edit text. So we're going to go to the, so make a copy of this, duplicate it, and then we're going to change each text so it actually clears each queue line edit every single time we are done. Alright, so once we've done that, we can now close our DB. But before that, let's connect that, and then we're going to close self.connection.close. Alright, so we're going to scroll to the top, and then we're going to remove the comment from the update button. Alright, so there we go. So let's run this. So when we run the Python file, it actually opens. So we need to look for an option that we actually want to change. So let's go and select Tiger Woods. So I want to change it from a golfer to a soccer player. Then let's see what happens. So when I click update, nothing happens. But when I close and reload, I can actually see that he has actually changed to a soccer player. So it's actually working well. Alright, so it seems sometimes you actually have to reload before you actually make it work. Alright, so work on the delete function. So we're going to create a cursor being equal to create connection cursor, and then next we're actually going to get the row index that has actually been selected. So we want to make sure that the selected row is one that can be deleted. So now we're going to have a message where we can call name. So we need the name of the current selected row. We're going to assign that to a variable, and that's going to be the variable that will actually pick the text from it. And then from there, we're going to actually set, so if no row is selected, we actually want a message to pop. So there will be a warning So the warning will be with the message, please select a record to delete. Or else, if a row is deselected, it will send a different message, which will be a confirmation message to ask a user, are you sure you want to delete the selected row? So that will be very key. And then there will be two standard buttons. There will be a yes or a no. So we're going to have a standard button for yes and a standard button for no. Alright, so once that is happened, so when a user clicks yes or whatever option, we can now do something. So when a user clicks on yes, it will now call for the SQL query, delete from employee list, where the name is the name that we've actually given right there. So we're going to execute this SQL query with that name item, and then next we're going to print a statement in our terminal, you deleted this name item. Then we're going to commit this, and then we're going to close. Alright, so now we can scroll to the very top. We can scroll to where we actually have that delete button, and then we can remove the comment. So we need to remove the comment. So where is that? So here it is. Remove that comment, and then we can now go to the main and run. Actually, go to the main and click run Python file. Now let's see what happens. So when I select an item, I'm going to select the last item on the list, Tom Holland, and click delete. Are you sure? Yes. So click on yes. So you need to reload to actually see that it has actually deleted. So in the terminal it says you deleted Tom Holland, but as you can see, when I reload, the name has actually disappeared. So this is how I work with SQLite database. I hope this video really helped you. I hope there was a lot to learn. If it did, feel free to tell me below in the comments, and then if it did, really give the video a thumbs up and then share it with those that you can. If you're new to the channel, I encourage you to join the community by subscribing, and then make sure to hit the notification bell so that you get updated every single time I upload a new video. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.